most confident person you know? Think about it, not cocky, just confident. Someone who, it doesn't matter what situation they're in, they know who they are, they know what they're doing, and they stay level-headed. It's almost like nothing stresses them out. Chances are, all of us know at least one person like that. Now think for a moment, how many of those people are Jesus followers? Is it a lot of them? I would like to guess so. Because there's something intriguing about the confidence of people who have been following Jesus for a very long time. They have this foundation under them that none of the rest of us seem to be able to find. We all want this confidence, don't we? To have an anchor holding us strong in a chaotic sea of life around us would be the best thing ever for many of us. We need the ability to quit beginning each of our sentences with what if and start using even if. From what if I fail to even if I fail. We long for this, but most people don't know how to find it, except Habakkuk. He figured it out at the end of his book. Wondering why God would allow so much chaos and evil in Israel, he cried out to God, asking how long God would wait before doing something about it. And God put him in his place and reminded Habakkuk that he was, in fact, working to answer those prayers in a way that Habakkuk couldn't understand on his own. And after God explained his victory, Habakkuk literally broke out into song. We'll look at it in a minute, but right now I want us to establish some things before we get going any further. God is always moving, even if we can't see it. We said this in week 1. He's also answering prayers only on his time and in his way, not ours. So now that we know that God is always moving for good and that he's always answering our prayers, how does that affect the way that we live? According to Habakkuk, it can give us the even if confidence that we have been talking about these past 2 weeks. Let's look at Habakkuk's final few verses. He's learned all of this about God working and answering prayers, and now he responds. I heard and my heart pounded. My lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. Though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. Look back again with me at what Habakkuk says in verses 17 and 18. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. Do you see it? It's all over these verses. Even if, even if, even if. It's repeated in the word though. Habakkuk has reached this place where he can say, even if God doesn't allow me to eat, I'm going to find my satisfaction and my joy in him alone. What does it take to get to this level of satisfaction? According to Habakkuk's earlier chapters, not much. All we have to do is believe that God is working and submit to his will, not ours. AKA, the way the door to this satisfaction swings open is by choosing to follow Jesus with our whole hearts. That's what Romans 10:9 says. Habakkuk started this book with confusion, with chaos, sadness, and pain. Now, after believing God is working and accepting how God answers his prayers, Habakkuk can say, I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. Habakkuk doesn't need anything except God. He is satisfied in God alone. This is one of the main goals of the gospel. That we would be able to look at the chaos in our lives and say, I'm okay, because I know that this is not the end of the story. We may be scared at the terrible things that we see around us, but it's not over, or at least it doesn't have to be. Habakkuk could have easily just given up after his original prayer in chapter 1 and chosen to believe that God was checked out and had no plan. But instead, he chose to trust Yahweh over his own understanding. And now we have this book because of it, giving us hope and a solid plan over 2,500 years later. Habakkuk's even if attitude has allowed him to not just grow closer to God, but to do so in a way that has affected millions of people throughout history. He looks at the scary things that could happen in his life and he hands them over to God. You take them, God. I'm not good with fragile, sensitive things. And in doing so, he gains this confidence that allows him to look at the terrible things like the exile to Babylon that would come up in just a decade or two after he wrote this, and to walk right into them, shoulders back, head held high, because he knows the God that he is following is trustworthy. Here's the point. We get to choose an even if perspective every day. That's what it is to see through the lens of the gospel. It means getting up every morning and seeing the circumstances in life, good and bad, through the unchanging gospel reality of God's character on display throughout human history. We get to choose that. And if we don't, the other alternative is to continue to say, what if, which will only fuel our anxiety. We'll be tempted to look at the terrible things that could happen, or maybe are happening, and begin to worry about all the what ifs. What if I fail? What if she rejects me? What if I make a fool of myself? What if they find out? What if they make fun of me? What if mom and dad get a divorce? What if? What if? What if? But none of those what ifs will help us. They're only going to get us stewing on those harmful thoughts more and more. Jesus' love and its power, made evident when he rose from the dead, are more than enough to get us through the worst of our experience. If he can walk straight through death, no problem, what else can he walk through just as effortlessly? Every bad thing that scares you. That's what. This is the last message in this series. And I think it's fitting because this topic today is all about choosing to trust Jesus in daily life based on the truths that we learned back in the beginning, that God is always working and he is always answering our prayers. When we know these two things, it should radically affect the way that we live. The resurrection, God's work, gives us the power to walk through all the other hard stuff. And it gets way easier to be the people that we were made to be, freeing in a way when we realize that the answers to our prayers are his to give, not ours to discover. The pressure in the answers to our prayers is shifted to him. Habakkuk wants us to know clearly, God is working. He's answering prayer and he's doing big things even if we can't see it. And when we know these things, we can look at each day with an even if attitude and be satisfied because he is enough for us, not just what he can do for us.